Today is Thursday, Shabbat Devarim or Shabbat Hazon, named after the name of the Haftarah that we are going to be reading this coming Shabbat. A few of the halachot that have to do with when Tisha B'Av happens on Saturday night, which is what's happening this year. So first of all, in terms of the Seudah Mafseket, the last Seudah that you have before you start the fast, there are not the same restrictions like we have when it's a weekday, because since it's Shabbat, you'll do Seudah Shlishi just like you would do typically, and there are no restrictions in terms of what types of food you can have. You can have meat, you can have wine, you can have a full meal, because if it happened that Tisha B'Av is during the middle of the week, then you have to eat only one cooked type of food for the Seudah Mafseket, and you have to sit down on the floor. But now, because it's Shabbat, this doesn't apply. You would sit at a regular table, and you can do zimun, complete, just like a regular Seudah of Shabbat. Of course, you have to finish before the sunset, and that's when the fast will begin. After sunset, wait until Shabbat is over to come to the synagogue for Arvit and the Kinot. There is no Havdalah on Saturday night this year, because we'll do the Havdalah on Sunday night when the fast of Tisha B'Av is over. The Havdalah we do mention as part of the prayer, we mention as part of Arvit, we're going to do Boreh Me'orei Esh. But on Sunday night, when we do the Havdalah, there is no Boreh Me'orei Esh and there is no Besamim. It's just on the wine and the rest of the text of Havdalah. Now, on the day of Tisha B'Av, we are to refrain from learning Torah. What do we mean? We refrain from learning Chumash, Nevi'im, Ketubim, Gemara, Mishnah. However, we still have the obligation to learn Torah on the day of Tisha B'Av, just themes and subjects that have to do with the theme of the day, which would describe what the Khurban was like. Musar, very important to realize that the fast and the mourning over the destruction of the temple is to motivate us to do teshuvah, to bring us to do teshuvah. In other words, it's not just to focus on the calamities and the adversity that happened on the date of Tisha B'Av, but rather to learn from the mistakes of the past, how we can improve ourselves and become better people. And even in the Haftarah, there's a pasuk that says that there is Kol Rosh Lacholi v'Cholevav Davai, and the Chida explains that instead of focusing on just the trouble and the adversity, a person should think about what it is that I can do to avoid this type of situation. Because when there is any suffering or anything that happens, it's not just by chance. A person has to introspect and see what is it that we are doing that needs to be improved, that we need to do teshuvah on, to avoid the type of difficulties that we're mourning about in the destruction of the temple. So this is an important aspect of the day of Tisha and the fast days that are instituted during the year, is to bring us to do teshuvah. The sitting on the floor and being involved in the idea of kinot, lamentations, etc., that's up all the way until Chatzot. After Chatzot, in the afternoon, then becomes what we say the Nechama, which is the consolation, and the Haftarah of the afternoon Tisha B'Av is something that is with many Pesukim that have to do with hope for the future and for coming of Mashiach and for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. In terms of other halachot that have to do with Tisha B'Av, we don't put tefillin in the morning. That's our custom. There are some that put on tefillin at home, but not at the synagogue. But our custom is not to put on tefillin in the morning. Tefillin and talit are put on in the afternoon for mincha. So these are just some of the halachot that have to do with the upcoming day of fast of Tisha B'Av. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.